Next In.
Welcome to Next In. Oh my gosh, the first one since the new year, I think. No, maybe not. But we haven't done one of these in a while because we've moved offices. We've launched a podcast studio, which we're not in because we're not in office. Thank you, though, for checking us out. We have Billy Boozer from, a few different places, from Hustle Mob. We're going to talk a little bit about Hustle Mob and kind of your experience there, and obviously like your hat, Colony. So we're going to get into it with Billy. Billy, why don't you tell us, and first off, thank you for joining us. Give us a little bit of your story. I know there's going to be some fun stuff about Billy's background, but give us your story.
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer. I'm a self-taught engineer. I've been building software for over a decade now, and it's my passion. It's what has empowered me through the years to learn and I guess just be a better person. And so over the last couple of years, I've got to build some really cool stuff. I've built APIs for renewable energy that are like the only ones in the world. I've built social networks. I've built currently fintech tools. I've even built cybersecurity platforms for really, really big healthcare providers. And so it's just been fun. It's been one of those rides where I decided shortly after I started building software that I was going to take on anything and everything I possibly could, because every project I learned something new, and it's been an absolute blessing in my life.
Well, the good news is Shane didn't like anything that you had to say, and so he left. And which makes this way more fun because, really it's kind of like an episode of Survivor. Someone's got to go. Shane's out. So I take it mostly back-end API layer, sounds like?
No. So I am a product guy. So I really focus on how people interact with the tools that I'm going to build, and then what problem we're solving in a business. And so while I do a decent amount of back-end work, I really focus on the interaction layer between human being and the products that I'm building.
Okay. So now, obviously, your background is in the software engineering, but you've done a lot of others. Like, if I'm not mistaken, you've been involved in Techstars.
Yeah. So I was a mentor at Techstars. I was an entrepreneur in residence at a venture fund in Birmingham, Alabama called Velocity. And I have been a mentor at a thing in Atlanta called Atlanta Tech Village for a few years now. I've actually stepped away from that to really focus on the project that I'm working on now. But one of my passions in life is helping other people get from 0 to 1 in their business. And most of the time that manifests as me helping them with technology or product market fit or go to market, or figuring out how to talk to their community that they're trying to address the problem in. And so really I just focus on trying to get somebody off of the ground with first-in-class technology.
How'd you get into that? Like, again, we probably have, of the 45 million or so people who watch this on a regular basis, a lot of them are going to be software engineers. Yeah. Most of them don't have the Techstars, and I'm in, an entrepreneur in residence, and I'm working with venture funds. How did you morph from the coder and here's the application I can build into where you're at now?
So a lot of times people describe me as weird, and it's probably based on the fact that I didn't take a traditional path to being a software engineer. And so when I was in college, I was a baseball player. I played ball at a small school in Georgia called Berry College. And I hurt my arm my first season, decided to stop playing baseball and try to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And so I started a degree with this place called Southern Poly, which is now Kennesaw State University. That was like a dual degree engineering with, I think, Georgia Tech. And it was kind of like one of these kind of hybrid programs. And I figured out like I wanted to be an architect, like an actual like build things architect or design things architect. And so I went 4 years through my architecture degree, and all the while kind of like trying to figure out software because it was just something that interested me and just kind of dabbled in it. And in 2007, the construction industry and the whole world changed, right? We went through a recession that was just devastating to so many people. And I realized while I was going through my architecture degree, many of the people that were graduating, let's say there was 200 people that started in our class. Of the 200 people that started in our class, by the 5th year of the degree, and when they graduated, they were there was like 1 or 2 of them getting jobs as architects. Like, we literally, in the class that I would have graduated from, we had like a truck driver, a lot of baristas. Like, they were getting degrees, and even if they got jobs in architecture, they were like paying $40,000 a year. And I wasn't passionate about it, but the amazing thing that it taught me was it taught me how to present an idea to an audience that was going to view it with a subjective eye, and that I had to sell the thing that was in front of me that I had created. And along that way, as I started diving deeper into software, I started getting consulting jobs just on the side, trying to build software. And I took a course at this thing called Big Nerd Ranch, which was like a corporate training thing that I borrowed some money from my parents. And within a few months of me doing that, I got a bunch of jobs building Ruby on Rails applications for marketing agencies and things like that. And went to an agency in Birmingham, Alabama, that needed somebody to fill in for somebody that was taking sabbatical. And I sat in a meeting with them, and they basically said, "Hey, how much are you going to charge us for, coming to work with us?" And I told them a number, and one of the ladies kind of like bumped me and said, "Hey, that's not enough. You should ask for more." So I asked for more, which was the nicest thing in the world, while the person that was going to make the decision on whether to hire me left out of the room. And I just shot for the moon and said like $100 an hour. And they were like, "Okay, cool." And from that point forward, I was like, I don't need to go to school anymore. This does not make sense. I love what I'm doing, and they're not teaching me the things I want to learn in school. And I realized if I just literally dove in, like, I'm talking like my wife sitting next to me in bed while going to sleep with computer light, because I'm constantly reading at 3 a.m. new technologies, because I just loved it so much that I could be really good at this. And so I just did that. I just self-taught myself software engineering, dropped out of school. And from that point forward, it was just like, what's the next thing I need to build? And that led me down a path of building things like applicant tracking systems for, high volume hiring for big manufacturing facilities, and then building marketing sites for really, really big brands like Little Debbie and like Discovery Channel. And then we started just building as many things as we possibly could, because each one of those things taught me something new. And it also taught me how to communicate the thing that I was going to have to sell up the chain to people. It taught me that the technology is not the problem. The business problem is the thing that we were solving. And it really taught me how to communicate technology to people that didn't necessarily understand it. It was kind of like being a wizard, like in Harry Potter world. Like, everyone else doesn't know how to do what you do. And once you learn it, there's this like power that you have. There's this feeling of agency that wells up with inside you. And it was just like, I couldn't, it was almost addicting. I had to go out there and build something else and build something new. And so along the way, I went to a few agencies, helped them build departments, built software around that. And then at one point in time, I just realized it was time for me to begin to build for myself. And so I started building different pieces of software that would apply to a ton of different industries, and taking on any consulting gig I possibly could to, just expand my knowledge base. And so that was kind of my non-traditional path into building.
So you shove off and become a founder. What would you say is your most successful, like from a founder perspective, launch or product you've launched?
Yeah, so we one of the most successful products that we launched was actually as a subset of a company called Southern Company. So like I think you guys are TBA or something like that, Tennessee Valley Authority, but assume that is like Southern Company is one of the largest energy providers in the world, and we built this thing called Cloverly, which is, as far as I know, still the only API as a service for calculating the carbon footprint of moving one thing to the next. So basically what we did was we created an API as a service that would plug into Shopify stores and WooCommerce stores that would calculate the carbon footprint of shipping an item from a facility all the way to you. And not only did it do that, but it matched it with projects that would output renewable energy credits that were near you. So let's say there was like a gas recapture at a landfill near us that output renewable energy credits. Like, we would go find that project within moments and make sure that we bought energy credits from there, and then we would show that to the end user and say, for 75 cents you can make this a green transaction. And since then they've raised a ton of money and done a really good job. I think the next real big project that I did was I was the chief product officer for a thing called Truth Social, which was the largest social media launch, or I think it was the fastest to 1 million users ever. And that was basically in the first moment that it existed.
Sure. Yeah, that was an SPAC, right? That's really what it came out of. It's the Donald Trump, answer to Twitter.
Yeah.
So you got involved with them. That's obviously a pretty interesting part of your path.
Yeah.
And I've even seen you kind of post, some other people have talked to you and said, hey, you're not really even super open about that. Like on LinkedIn, it's not like, hey, look at me. Yeah. I was part of a Donald Trump thing. Why not?
Well, no, so it's actually on my LinkedIn. Most people don't realize that we were a company called Trump Media Technology Group. And so when you see TMTG on mine and it says Chief Product Officer, it's there. And I'm one of the only few people that's really known to work there. And most of that came from the fact that in the early days when we were working on this, it was like dangerous for us. Like, we would have people show up, try to take pictures of us. We would have people dox us. Early in the project, when we first launched, we even had one of our vendors that was working with us. And I say this, working with us, I don't know if they really knew who we were when we were there.
Right.
Once they found out who we were, they deplatformed us. And then they tried to find the people that actually put the credit card information in so that they could go dox them publicly. And so it wasn't necessarily the safest thing in the world, but we did it because we all had a very strong tie to the idea that free speech in our country was very, very a valuable resource that seemed to be dwindling at times. And so because of that, we all wanted to contribute to building something that would at least, shine a light on that this is a problem, right? And there wasn't a place to go to. Like, Twitter at the time was contributing to the problem. Jack Dorsey was still the CEO there. Elon had not bought it yet. There was nowhere we could go other than maybe like some of these very alternative social networks like Gab and things like that would actually consider the concept of free speech as a core tenet of their business. And we really thought, and we were all on a mission to make sure that this was a real free speech platform, given the constraints of we wanted to launch it on the Apple App Store, and they actually have a bunch of rules that don't necessarily abide by free speech. So
yeah, I remember when it all went down, just seeing the news of like the Parler just all of a sudden in a matter of a day, because you saw Parler during the election or whatever, starts growing and everyone's like, holy cow. And I'm like, man, that would have been a great thing to invest in. I do some investing. And so you see stuff like that and you're like, oh, wish I had gotten in on that one.
Yeah.
But then within minutes, it was gone. Literally in a day, it went from the fastest growing app, booming, seemingly was doing the same thing as, a Twitter or whatever. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden within minutes, it was gone.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're striking on is the actual difficult part of what we did there. So we couldn't use Amazon Web Services. We couldn't use Google Cloud Provider. We could not use Azure because none of them would allow us to be on their platform. And so what we actually had to do was build data centers across the United States. We had to rack servers. We had to plug in networking cables. We had to deploy open source cloud frameworks to each one of these servers. We had to make sure there was redundancies in every single layer of our stack. And most of the redundancies that existed were software that we deployed from the open source community. So even the underlying thing that we built, which was Truth Social, we built it off of a open source social network called Mastodon, which is the basis for Gab. And we even hired like the best engineers that would build the front ends for Gab, like they actually built those things to come over to our team and make sure that we had the best in class product. And when I came on board, it was actually like we had a previous CTO. The CTO decided he did not. It was like, you know, a very hectic environment. He didn't want to be there, and they actually offered me the CTO role. And I was like, no, you know, I want to manage the product, and I really love the way people interact with things, but going down to building a uncancelable infrastructure was like, that's a huge task. And I was lucky to have one of my best friends in the world who brought me into the project, a guy named Josh Adams. He is one of the foremost experts in many languages in the world, but he also understands underlying infrastructure better than anyone. And so he went out there and said, hey, I'll be the CTO. I'll take on this responsibility. And him and I, in 4 months, 4 or 5 months, built a social network, built the underlying infrastructure, built all the software that was needed to support it, like content moderation, and because we had user-generated content, and that was important to be able to make sure that we complied with Apple's regulatory environment that they've kind of created for themselves. And we built something that I don't think anyone's ever executed on in a time frame that we executed on it.
Well, sure, and because of it, there was massive growth there. We'll see if it sustains. I think, obviously, to your point, Elon taking over Twitter probably hurt the true social concept of, like, because now I think people see Twitter as a place that is a little bit more open. Do you feel like you had to agree with the political slant, or just agree with the idea that you were going to build something challenging? I guess I'm asking that from a recruiting perspective. A lot of what we try to do when we recruit engineers to companies is to understand the mission and culture of a business and make sure that we put people that fit that mission and culture. When you look at something as, I guess, divisive as what that probably was seen as, were there people that were on your team or that you worked with that you felt like, look, we don't agree on a lot of our maybe political slants, but we had to agree on the mission to build something that was uncancelable? I don't know if there's a word.
Uncancelable is the trope, I guess, right now. But so I think that was actually where the magic was, is that in the early days, we set forth a mission that was, we were a free speech platform, and we wanted everyone to come on the platform. We didn't want just the right. We did want to enable people that are right-leaning or conservative to have a place to speak their opinion, because there wasn't a place at the time. I mean, you can see right now as you watch the hearings that are going on with Twitter executives or past Twitter executives, how that was not an environment that was conducive for somebody that had conservative ideologies or conservative thought patterns. And in full transparency, I classify myself as a fairly conservative person. I have a faith-based background that really informs a lot of my social opinions. And then I generally think that I would love it if the government never impeded on me being able to do the great things that I think I can do in life. And so that's the perspective that I take with every day with everything that I build. And so when I came in, I was aligned in that sense, but it didn't mean we were all a monolithic thought pattern, right? We were all individuals that had their own either concerns or wants to solve problems within the free speech world. Everyone had some tie back to figuring out, like, why they felt disenfranchised, right, by the current environment. And when I say everyone, like, when it started, it was me, Josh, one other engineer, and then 2 or 3 guys from the Apprentice that were literally like apprentice contestants at one point in time. I think we had 3 total apprentice people that were there, and 2 of them were the people that actually started Trump Media Technology Group. And they came to the president, I think, just after January 6th, and he got deplatformed and said, hey, I think we need to build you a platform in some way. And there was like a big leak about it where it was like they wanted to build a new news thing or something like that. And what they really consolidated on was the idea that this communication layer between people that didn't believe one thing and the communication layer that existed where people were allowed to talk if they had bought into one ideology. They thought that was the moment or the place to be able to inject a new tool, right? And having the president on board was super important because he had a lot of offers to go other places. He had people that were pulling him in all kinds of different directions to say, hey, you could come over to, and I don't even remember the other platforms, but you could come over here and you can talk, you can, whatever it takes to get you over here. And they just convinced him that it was a good idea to build something that was his and that he could make sure that without any other scrutiny, he had the ability to have a voice. Now, on the political agreement side, I don't agree with everything President Trump says. There's no doubt about that. I honestly don't know if I would vote for him in the next election, right? Like, someone has to prove that to me. And one of the things that I did realize during that time is politicians are legitimately, and this is kind of outside of the president because he was actually halfway decent in comparative to everyone else that I met. Politicians are terrible, man. They're like the worst people.
That's so good. So as long as we all agree, very good. All right.
They are awful, like without a doubt. The vast majority of them, especially at the federal level, do not care about their constituents one bit, and they are self-preservation beings. They are only there to keep their job and not lose their job, and that is a problem with our current system, and it concerns me. But it was more concerning to see it from the inside and see all the kind of like grifters that exist in this world trying to take advantage of the political sphere that could be surrounding this.
So how do we again? I think here's my, again, maybe I'm wrong. My belief is anyone listening to this, no matter which side, they're all going to be pissed off, right? Everyone's going to be like, "Oh, how dare you talk about that?" Everything, right? Everything gets everyone mad.
Yeah.
How do we solve it, right? How do we solve the problem in technology? Because that's where it's headed. Yesterday, I'm reading an article about the new AI, right? That's the hot button topic.
Yeah, ChatGPT.
November, ChatGPT, and there's about 36 others that are all doing something similar. And it seems like this amazing technology, but it's also super dangerous technology. Do you watch Black Mirror, by the way?
I have, yeah.
Okay. So for everyone, this is really just a Black Mirror commercial.
Yes, it is.
It's a fantastic show. It's like my favorite show, although they don't come out with enough new ones.
Yeah.
But it's true, right? Technology is so awesome and it's so cool, but it's so dangerous.
Oh, it is.
Because the people, like you said, your engineering background empowered you, and that's what gave you the power to do something like a wizard. I mean, you were the one who said it, not me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's true, is whatever technology we have, whether it's this AI that's going to write news articles for us, that I believe BuzzFeed and Sports Illustrated have even come out and said they'll use it, to people who are using it to write their blog posts or whatever. That sounds amazing. Holy cow, I get to hit a button and it just writes for me. That's awesome. Except it's not, right?
Yeah.
Because that can completely be distorted. And oh, cool, we're going to have this cool thing called Twitter where we can all just talk. And I remember when it first really came out, it was this idea that you could talk to celebrities. That's really what made it big, is like, I have a direct line to talk to Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's like getting his autograph, but we actually talk to each other. Like, sure we do. I'm sure we're really close friends. But that, of course, got distorted, as you saw. Yeah. And then it continued. All of these things get distorted exactly how Black Mirror shows you it's going to happen. In some way, shape, or form, it gets distorted. Oh, cool. We're going to have robots. And then they'll come and kill us. They're all amazing. How do we avoid the bad that comes from technology, whether it's the fact that you're creating a social media app and because of it, your family's in danger, is outrageous. That's crazy. And I think 99% of the people listening to this, whether they like you or hate you right now, can agree that that's nuts.
Yeah. Well, I wish 99% of people could. I think there are a lot of people that don't actually agree with that, and that is a scary prospect. I mean, like at one point in time, literally right behind me, where you can see out the window, I had New York Times and I think Reuters. Reuters showed up at my front door, and they wouldn't really even leave until I came out and like said, "Hey, I'm not talking to you." So like I live way away from the city of Atlanta. Like it takes them a long time to get here. And I think I think what we have to do is let's talk about Chat GPT. Like one of the biggest concerns are the inputs that are training what's called large language models. So large language models are, or LLM, is what you'll see people talk about a lot of how these things have become so great at being able to have a conversation with you and break down that barrier between knowing whether it is artificial intelligence and it is, a human or a human being on the other side. And a lot of this is trained by other human beings that they use as like there's this concept of a mechanical Turk, which is basically like people doing medial tasks that are repetitive, that cost very little. I think Amazon has this service called Mechanical Turk that does it. But basically, they create these Mechanical Turk style services where people will then inform it of what the intention behind this was. And I think we have to be individually intentional about how we choose the people that engage with these services. I think there are new legislation that should be introduced around things like Section 230 that needs to be updated to meet with the newer standards. And I think the other thing on the political side is we need to get people that actually understand technology in the political sphere. Right now, if you go talk to a politician, or if you hear them talking on one of these panels or committees, they're being fed every question that is being asked.
Correct.
And the people that are feeding them are unknowledgeable or do not have the knowledge base to actually feed them these questions. They don't know what a CDN is. They don't know what a VPN is. They don't know what the underlying technologies are, and they won't even know what large language models are. And so we have to find people that are willing to interact with our government and actually tell them what these things are, help them understand them. Because again, just like I said earlier, the people that know this are like wizards and everyone else doesn't know the magic. And because they don't know the magic, they get to kind of lord this over people. And my hope is that people will get more involved with local legislation and federal government that will actually help them understand, hey, this is what the implications are when you begin to inject a very biased opinion inside one of these tools. Like, I mean, there's been a lot of concern from the Christian community that, things like ChatGPT will not take into account their faith, will not take into account what their belief set is. And that applies across any religion, that applies across any political ideology. And it's really hard to create an egalitarian system. Like, I don't envy the people that have to or will be responsible for the AI that does these things in the future.
Although it is awesome if you've used it.
It is really cool.
It is really outrageous when you can be like, say it the way Sylvester Stallone would say it.
It's exactly.
Right? So, I mean, it does some fun. So it feels like to me, the AI is kind of at that moment when the iPhone came out with the app that makes farting noises. Like, I don't know the usefulness of it yet. This whole app thing is going to be cool, but right now it's still very, rudimentary and it needs to be ironed out. But once it gets ironed out, the use cases for it are going to be almost endless, like you see with apps. And again, to your point of like making sure it is done properly so that it isn't in as much as possible a non-biased way of going, here's how we can interact with AI in a more useful manner.
Also assume that all of these things people have been working on them for multiple years now. Like ChatGPT didn't come out this year.
Yeah,
right?
no
Like,
kidding.
meaning it came out, GPT-3 came out a few years ago, and people have been using it to figure out how to implement large language models. So like when it hits a consumer or when it hits your eyes and everyone else's in the public's eyes, developers like me and developers like Josh and a bunch of other people, or like Mark Zuckerberg and all these people, they've been all using this for a while now, trying to figure out how to commercialize it, how to actually solve problems with it. And when there are certain industries that moving fast and breaking things work in. And then there are certain industries like fintech that moving fast and breaking things in jail, right? Like that's like, as soon as you start moving fast and breaking things in fintech, you're money laundering, right? So like there are different consequences for different industries. And what we are seeing right now are the consequences of moving fast and breaking things while interjecting with the current culture. And when you interact with the current culture, it's very difficult to know what the baseline of truth is. It's difficult to know what the baseline of quality or what can be potentially harmful to the underlying users of the product, right? It's all done in real time. You see the damage done in real time, and it's very difficult to unwind that. And so I would suggest that as people are building these things, they think about the unintended consequences, and as those unintended consequences arrive, they take accountability for what happens with the things that they build. I think, funny enough, the most authentic social network that exists in the world is LinkedIn right now, and the reason why is because your job is there, right? You know where that person works. There's an accountability structure that holds you as an individual accountable to the words that you say, because you don't want to get fired, right? And so none of the other social networks up until recently, had that consequence. Like, people would just throw everything out there and see what happened. I don't advocate for the concept of cancel culture or anything like that, but there is something interesting inside this about accountability and how you can be held accountable, or you should at least take into account what will happen given you espouse certain things or you tell the world certain things. And I think that needs to be applied throughout technology. I mean, the world of everything is free and you are the product because you're being advertised to,
Yeah.
has to be flipped on its head a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people, not everyone, I make very bold statements here.
Yeah.
But a lot of people woke up when they watched the documentary, The Social Experiment or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That statement was made. And for those of us in technology, maybe we knew that. But for a lot of people, they were like, oh, that's right. That's why all of this stuff is free and these companies are printing money. It doesn't make sense. Well, yeah, because you're the product.
Yeah. I used to liken it to, back in the day, you'd walk through a mall and people would say, hey, I'll give you a $10 gift card to fill out this survey or something like that, or I'll give you a discount at this store. Well, now you just give it up for free and you don't know it because it's super passive. Every time you input a piece of data into Facebook, or like something on Twitter, or double tap something on Instagram, you're giving them that same level, if not way deeper, information about what your interests are, why you do what you do, when you do what you do, what place you do it from, right? All of those things are pieces of information that the developers of these projects are using to be able to tailor the experience to make you use the product more frequently. And so, I mean, we even see that with the controversy that exists with TikTok right now, like the concern that data now is going to a foreign adversary. That is a concern, and it should be taken very seriously. But right now, because it's so addictive and it's so fun and you get so much entertainment out of it, most people are just willing to just keep going and keep going and keep going, not knowing that they are sending a lot of information to somewhere that they don't know what the end goal is for that information.
Oh man, we could go on for a while just about the social media and the hazards of it, and we're seeing hazards too with what it's doing to the population of children, specifically middle school aged ish girls, and depression, and how that spike has gone through the roof. And
there are some companies that have been trying to kind of like battle back against this, like in Atlanta, and I have no affiliation with this company at all. I've only seen them from afar, but there's a company called Bark that is intended on helping parents understand the interactions that their kids are receiving in social networks. They've even launched their own phone to be able to make sure that parents have insight into what's happening with their kids. And then even like, I think Ashton Kutcher has a fund that he focuses on human trafficking and trying to make sure that children are safe in these environments. Funny enough, there's only 3 places in the world that you can get there's basically data sets for child pornography, meaning like you have to be able to, when you have a application that generates user generated content, or UGC, you have to be able to throw that through a filter that makes sure that none of that UGC is child pornography. And the way they do that is they house all of the content for that child pornography that anyone finds across the world in this database where they hash the images, which means they come up with a textual representation or a string-based
classification, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And then when any of these images come through, we bounce those against that system to see, well, Microsoft owns one of them. Let's see, Facebook has its own version of it. And then there is one other company that Ashton Kutcher funded, I think, that manages the other one. So there's only 3 companies in the world that manage being able to make sure that existing known child pornography is not continued to be propagated across other networks. And that's crazy to me, because you would imagine that you want to make sure that that never happens in any of these systems. And those are the only 3 companies.
Can you imagine a worse job? Can you imagine me recruiting you and going, hey, here's what the job is, and we're going to pay you whatever you want, but you have to be content moderation for child pornography. Sounds like the worst possible job that I don't even think there's a number you could give. Like, sounds horrible. So I can see people being like, I'll stay away from that. Although it is for a great cause, but oh my gosh.
Yeah, it is crazy. And so that's where there's a big opportunity in things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? Like, there's a big opportunity there to be able to potentially eradicate what that is. When computers can use image vision to be able to objectively observe an image and see whether it includes child pornography, which already to a certain extent exists, and is getting better every single day, that's an opportunity to make sure that using the internet for child exploitation is just completely eradicated. And I hope that we're able to use those technologies to solve those types of problems as high frequently as we can. Bullying, the negative attributes of children when they don't realize there are consequences for the words that they have against their friends. And so, I hope that there's an opportunity to be able to see a lot of people really put a lot of engineering and thought power behind that problem. It's not a sexy problem; it's a scary problem.
Yeah. Do you have any kids?
Yeah, I've got 2 kids.
Okay, I got 5. Yeah. So this is like a nightmare to deal with. I have middle school. My girls haven't gotten to that age yet. Mm-hmm. Holy cow! Hopefully, someone solves that problem.
It terrifies me.
Yeah. Yep, we got 4 years before my girls hit that, so let's make sure the problem's solved. If you can take care of that, Billy, that'd be great. 4 years. Yeah. Clock started.
We'll work on it.
Did not expect the conversation to get into this. That got really deep and depressing. That's awesome. So, Billy, tell me a little bit about the projects you're working on now.
Yeah, so we've got 2 different companies that we started recently. One of them is called Colony. It's a managed service provider for a thing called Kubernetes. We actually described it as a managed service provider for cloud, but one of the things that we learned while we were at Truth was, there's a big crutch that exists within the engineering world, and there's also this big crutch that all of the enterprises in the world are using, which is AWS, GCP, and Azure, right? And then there's a couple other ones, like even Salesforce has Heroku, and they have a big cloud. And we use all of these tools, but what we are doing is we are giving up our data to another company, right? And we are making them the steward of our applications. We're making them the steward of our data. We're making them the steward of telecommunications providers, all these kind of things. And we think that individual companies should regain control of those things. And many of these large enterprises in the world have their own data centers, and they could deploy their own clouds, and they could do these things. But many of them aren't. And so our goal is to be able to use this technology called Kubernetes, which was actually developed at Google, that allows you to containerize applications and infrastructure and deploy them to any underlying hosting provider that you want. And what we believe is that by doing that and by being able to basically productize or containerize your infrastructure and your application layer and making it to where you can move it wherever you want, you create the maximum amount of leverage for your business and your underlying hosting provider, so that, let's say GCP decides to increase their price by 30%, which they've done over time. You have the ability to say, okay, cool, peace out. I'm going to go host it on my own on-prem servers, or I'm going to go to an alternative data center. And so as a part of my conservative ethos, I think that, companies should own their own data, be in control of that data, and we should be able to empower them to make better choices with how they create their applications and deploy their clouds. So that's what Colony does. And then we started a new project, and it's kind of, I call it my side hustle, right? But it is an actual side hustle project in the sense that we built this thing called Hustle Mob, which is intended to be, and we're in the very early stages of beginning to tell the story about this, but it's intended to be the tool that people use to go from side hustle to a business entity. And the first tool that we've created is basically a Venmo alternative for side hustlers. People that take in payments, people that transact between each other. We want those to stop being social payments at that early stage of a business, because a lot of people are using Venmo and Cash Apps and they can't reconcile their taxes, and they aren't, actually receiving the benefit of business entities and, being very intelligent with their sole proprietorship. We want to be able to empower those users with better tools and a community that teaches them how to go from that 0 phase to 1 and actually have a business entity that provides better value for not only their business, but their family, and supports their family. So that's what Hustle Mob is. And so you can go to hustlemob.com, and we've got the pre-registration for reserving your username. And it just basically says, hey, what do you want your username to be? We send you an SMS to verify that you are who you are. And then we ask you about what your hustle is. And hopefully our goal is to be able to offer you tools soon that will enable you to better transact with your end users and lower the barrier to entry to people to start new hustles.
Is there going to be some level of connection with, all right, so give me a good use case hustle?
Yeah, so a great use case is you pressure wash driveways, right? And you want to lower the barrier to people paying you, but you also want to do it in a professional way. And so we've created some tools to be able to make it really easy for you to transact those payments and really, really quickly make sure that you're getting those payments in. Or let's say another one, like the real inspiration for this was I went to Nashville one weekend.
Oh, beautiful, wonderful place.
Exactly, great place. You guys are up there, and I didn't have any cash to pay my my valet person at the restaurant that I went to, and eventually the valet person just comped me, but like the alternative was that I went and scanned his Venmo, and then I saw not only his splitting a pizza and a vacation, but also his weed purchases from his buddy or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't really want to connect on that level with that person. I want to be able to transfer the value that is required for me to get the service that I want from this person. And I want to make sure he's got a professional way to do so. And so basically what we did was we started with these little NFC cards that allow you to just tap the back of a phone in a very dumb way. And then it pops up a landing page that allows that person to take payments. And then we built a whole double entry accounting ledger so the in-network transactions are free, all kinds of stuff like that. And that's what we're starting off with, the first tool to support side hustlers.
And now his weed dealer has a legitimate way to say, here, give me a payment.
Yeah, hopefully that's not where people go. And we're going to do a good job of building software that does not allow them to do that.
So. I know. So I guess that, because I felt the same way when I'm on Venmo and I'm sending stuff, and then I send something, and then I look below my little payment and it says, oh, my neighbor paid someone I've never heard of for, like you said, pizza. And I'm like, why do I need to know that? I have no desire to know that my neighbor paid someone else in the world for pizza or a softball practice or what. Why? I don't understand the concept behind that in Venmo. The social component of it makes zero sense to me. Does that make me go, wow, now I want to pay someone for pizza?
Yeah, exactly. I think when Venmo was created, that made sense, right? Social networks were going crazy. The idea of sharing everything in your life was just absolutely up and to the right? And then they were bought by another company, then PayPal bought them. And they really haven't iterated on that product very much in the last couple of years. At very most, they've had some business tooling. They've made it to where you might be able to get debt or something like that. And it really doesn't support an entrepreneur. It supports just making a payment between people. And what we want to do is create a community of people that help teach you what the value of a depreciated asset is, what OPEX and CAPEX are, what the value of creating an LLC for your business is when you're a woodworker and you make furniture and you want to sell it to people, and you know that something's going on here. I know that I should be able to receive tax benefit by buying these materials, but I don't know how. Like, we're creating integrations with Xero and QuickBooks to make sure that you can transact these things, manage your accounting. And then we're also going to create content that's around this. Like, we're going to find great people that are like in recruiting like you are, or in accounting or in legal, that help tell people what the value of this type of service and what the value is of creating your own business, so that we can create more small businesses in America. Our goal is to create more small businesses here, because we think it's a better world if there are more opportunities for people to make money and support their families.
Yeah, it makes sense. Connect them with like a legal Zoom, and like, here's how you build your LLC. And yeah.
Well, we're one of the plans that we have in the future is actually being able to roll your own entity within the service. So like, we're going to go as deep as we possibly can to make sure that we do everything to support the earliest stage of an entrepreneur. I mean, there's the largest segment of businesses in America. There's like 30 million businesses in America that have no employees. And I think there's like 24 million businesses that identify as a sole proprietorship. And those are the people that we want to support, because we don't think anyone's building tools for them.
Got it. Okay. So how can we help both Colony Hustle Mob? But
yeah,
you got this platform with the 60 million people listening. Well, what can we do to help you?
Yeah, I think, the reason why I came on here was, one, to be able to tell a little bit of the story of, what we've done, as well as say, we're going in this direction and we'd love people to come along with us. So I think the best way that you can be helpful is anybody that's listening to this, go to hustlemob.com, go ahead and reserve your username. We may charge for them in the future, because we think that one of the barriers to keeping bots out and to make sure that people are accountable for the things that they do is making sure that they pay for a service, right? And so we may do that. I think one of our ideas is to make sure that if you don't use our service, you don't get charged for our service, because we want to, again, do whatever it takes and have a mission that supports those small businesses. So go there and pre-register for the app before it comes out. And then on the Colony side, we build for very large companies. That service is built for companies that need data centers, the companies
enterprise level.
Yeah, enterprise companies that need to be able to manage their own data in their own way and have predictability and sustainability and reliability in how they deploy their underlying infrastructure. So if a company that's got their own cloud or is thinking about doing things like digital transformations that have hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, or on-prem services, and they're trying to figure out what their next cloud strategy is, we want them to come to us, and we'll help them make sure they make the best decisions for their business. And we've got the best engineers in the world to do that.
Awesome. All right. So a couple of personal things. This is the fun part. Like, I've been waiting for this. I wanted to ask this earlier. Didn't want to cut you off. Who's your favorite baseball player? I'm guessing Chipper Jones.
Nope. Ted Williams. Ted Williams is the best baseball player that ever existed. He actually had a moral backbone, and he served our country.
Correct, outside of Bo Jackson. You are absolutely right between Bo Jackson.
Well, and I respect all of those. I mean, I have a ton of respect. My probably all-time favorite player to watch back in the day was Ken Griffey. Like, the sweetest thing that ever existed, But I have an affinity towards Boston, and I have an affinity towards the Red Sox. And so always loved them when I was a kid. And then in the Atlanta world, like, funny enough, like, I used to see John Smoltz all the time around town. Like, his family lives up in the area where I live, and he was one of my favorite pitchers ever, him and Greg Maddux. So, like, I'm always going to be a huge Atlanta Braves fan. So I look forward to seeing what they do in the coming years.
My favorite part is that Greg Maddox's best years were with the Braves and not the Cubs.
But then he went in the Hall of Fame as a Cub. So, yeah.
Which is stupid, because the Braves were really where he made, in my opinion, made his career.
Yeah, I think everyone knows him as a Brave. Like, that's what they know him.
Yeah, he played his minor leagues in Chicago, for the Cubs, the minor league team there. And then he came down to pitch for the Braves, the major league team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a huge fan of just baseball lore and baseball history. I mean, like, Nolan Ryan is one of the coolest players that has ever existed. Him and Satchel Paige, like, just look up their stories and see, people saying that they threw 109 miles an hour, 106 miles an hour at one point in time. Like, I touched 90 once or twice when I was younger. Like, it's so cool to think that there's somebody out there throwing a ball that hard.
So you're like the baseball purist, is that right?
I'm a bit of a baseball purist.
Have you heard about the two new things that are coming out this year in baseball? The bigger base?
What are they doing? A new clock or something like that? I don't know.
They have the pitch clock and the hitter clock. The hitter can only take one time out per at bat. It's going to be very strange. And they have a bigger base. Have you heard about this bigger base?
Oh, yes, I have. And this is like a player safety issue. Truthfully, like, I believe in player safety. When I was a kid, I played football, and I think it was 4 concussions when I was in high school. And the reason why I got 4 concussions were, if you ever played football, they used to have these, like, I think they were Riddell helmets, and they had these, like, blue diaphragms on the inside. And those blue diaphragms were meant to be pumped up, and it was supposed to be the thing that kept you from, like, bouncing your brain around in your head. I don't think I ever, as a child, had one of them that wasn't popped. That diaphragm was popped every single time, right? And I think, in retrospect, I think it's very important to make sure we predicate, a lot of decisions on player safety when it comes to football, baseball, and all of those things. I do think that interjecting too much technology into any of these sports is a bad idea, because there's a purist and human element to this. And if we're going to go down that route, we might as well just play all of the baseball games on, MLB 2023 or whatever it is on your.
Which would be fantastic, because we do a lot of recruiting for video game companies, so that would actually help us out quite a bit.
I'm a huge video game guy, so like I'm a huge fan of that. So I'm super excited to see where that goes for y'all.
All right. So if we go to Atlanta, which I will be doing this summer, I believe, I know I am. I'm going there for baseball and for a basketball tournament for separate boys. Okay. What do I need to do?
You need to eat some good food. You can go to Rathbun Steakhouse. You can't go with your kids because it's going to be way too expensive, but they've got great steaks. I think go down to Pont City Market. It's a really fun place. The Techstars main office in Atlanta is there, along with MailChimp's office, and like I think FanDuel has an office there now. And it's just this big, like kind of like outdoor-ish, outdoor-indoor mall type thing. And when I say mall, I don't mean mall in the sense of like Simon Malls. I mean in the sense of like this was a converted old like paper mill or something like that they just made into this really cool community element. Go up to the new Braves Stadium. It is absolutely beautiful.
We are going to a Braves game.
Oh yeah, I got the great pleasure to be able to walk out on the field prior to it even really getting going, because we were demoing some software for the Braves, and it was the coolest thing ever to be out there, especially as somebody that had aspirations to do that in my life. Like, it was really neat to stand on the field and look out and see, like, what would happen if this was full. I don't know if you ever saw For the Love of the Game, but there was that moment where Kevin Costner would stand on the mound and say, clear the mechanism or whatever, and like all of a sudden he just zoned in on it. And it was like you kind of got to see that feeling when you're on there and there's nobody out in the stands, and it's really, really neat. And then get out into just like Nashville and just like Tennessee, Georgia has some amazing trails and has amazing outdoor activities to do. So go do something outdoors there. It's a beautiful place. If you go play baseball or go to a baseball place, East Cobb is over here, which is like
that's where we will be. We will be in East Cobb for a tournament.
Yes, and so I played at East Cobb when I was a kid, and it is it's the mecca in my opinion for under 18 baseball. And then there's another facility called Lake Point, which is really cool, and it's like I think the Braves guys started it. It had an issue, and then they rebought it or something like that. But it is one of the nicest baseball facilities I've ever seen in my life. I mean, to play on that as a child means that you're playing on basically professional fields. And the auspices of being a professional is like right there. Like you feel like you're a pro ball player, and that's a really cool feeling.
All right. So you mentioned movies. Last question. What's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Hackers is my favorite movie.
Okay. I guess from a tech guy, that makes sense. Hackers.
Yeah.
What that come out? That came out in what, 2000?
Oh yeah, a long time ago. I mean, this is like Angelina Jolie. There's a guy that played in this like Sherlock Holmes TV show that was like really good.
It had a pretty good soundtrack, didn't it?
Oh, it had the best. That's like why everyone loves it.
Yeah.
It's like the opening sequence song. Like, and funny enough, like it's like shows like *Halt and Catch Fire* recently. Like, I hate that they killed that show, or even or Silicon Valley, right? Like, it was semi-accurate to the time. Like, even Silicon Valley, what people don't realize is it's satire, but it's real. Like, they've got scenes where like Kid Rock shows up and there's nobody really watching him. Like, that happens in Silicon Valley. That is not a fake thing. Like, they would have some rando superstar show up at a launch event for a thing, and they'd just be all drinking and hanging out, nobody paying attention to the superstar that's on stage. So like,
the person they paid $250,000 to sing. Yep.
Exactly. And so like, there's some level of authenticity to that that's really neat. And I think I don't know a person that is in engineering or that is in computer science that really doesn't like that movie. So I've always liked it. My sister introduced it to me when I was a kid.
So Hackers is like that to software engineers, sort of like Wolf of Wall Street is to stockbrokers.
I imagine. I mean, Wolf of Wall Street takes it to a pretty extreme,
well, right. That's the point. It's almost satire. It's illegal, but it's like that crazy. It's the holy cow, anything goes. Yeah. Make money hand over fist, but do stuff you probably should never put on TV. Kind of craziness, right?
Exactly.
Boiler Room was the original.
Oh yeah, Boiler Room was the original. And I like everything from like the 80s to like 2010. Like that era. I know a lot of people hate that era, but like it's just it's almost kitschy. You know what I mean? It's like it harkens back to a time, and you see this with Stranger Things now, right? Like you see that. There are people that love that show because of the aesthetic that it presents and what it reminds them of, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a neat thing. I'm a fan of those types of shows. I mean, we watch Home Improvement here in my house, so or Last Man Standing.
To some extent, this sounds like the two old guys who are saying like, yes, things were great when we were kids. Yes, because they were great when we were kids. I'm sure my kids will eventually say the same thing. It's like
I often think about that, whether my parents were crazy when they said those things, but I truly believe things were, at least on a cultural perspective, better than for me as a child. Right?
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't feel uncomfortable going outside, running around on my bike in areas, and nowadays I'd feel uncomfortable with my kids doing some of that stuff. So like not in my community, but in other communities. So.
Yeah. Well, we will officially say if you were born between 1975 and 1985,
yes,
you are the perfect human being.
Yes, that is an accurate statement.
It's official. We have decided it. We are the end all be all.
Yep,
so, Billy, I appreciate. How can people get in touch with you? Get connected to you?
Yeah, you can, if you want to email me, billy@hustlemob.com. You can find me on LinkedIn and go over to hustlemob.com and pre-register. We're really excited about what we're building, and I think we're going to, hopefully change people's lives for the better and create more small businesses in America.
That's awesome. So I love it. This has been a ton of fun learning about, coming from everything from baseball player to architect to software architect, software engineer, to now someone in the product space, founder, and founding some pretty cool stuff, everything from social media to renewable energy product to now we're in the just SaaS space and growing some awesome products for small businesses and enterprise businesses.
Yep.
So this has been a ton of fun, Billy. I appreciate you coming on the show. For everyone, like this, subscribe. Let us know what your thoughts on this conversation, any questions you have in the comments below. But thank you, Billy, again, and we will see you all soon.
Next in